With any sufficiently popular movie franchise, there's naturally a major thirst from fans to see how the sausage was made, so to speak, with behind-the-scenes documentaries holding enormous value for those who cherish the IP the most. It's hardly a secret that any Star Wars movie is basically fresh hell to make, from the technical challenges on set to the endurance trial that is post-production. And while there are literally dozens, if not hundreds, of great Star Wars docs to feast your eyes upon out there, if you want to focus on the cream of the crop, then look no further than this lot. So I'm Gareth, this is What Culture Star Wars, and here are the 10 best Star Wars documentaries. Number 10, A Disturbance in the Force. There will surely never be a more infamous piece of Star Wars media than the Star Wars Holiday Special. The seasonal variety show aired in 1978, which was so poorly received by, well, everyone, that George Lucas and Disney have refused to ever officially release it. The Holiday Special has since become a beguiling piece of cult esoterica in its own right, living on through bootleg distribution online and spawning its own inexplicable fandom in the process. And A Disturbance in the Force perfectly runs down the development, troubled production, and unexpected legacy of this hallowed dud. Melding archive footage and new talking head interviews with a bevy of nerd culture mainstays, such as Kevin Smith, Seth Green, and Paul Scheer, this is an insightful doc which nimbly toes the line between laughing at the Holiday Special and showing genuine affection for its mere balmy existence. More love for the Chewie fan, I say. Number 9, Elree 1976. Perhaps the single most unique and niche Star Wars documentary ever made. Elree 1976 is less a behind-the-scenes doc than an unconventional look at a few of the many folk who played faceless roles across the franchise. The doc catches up with 10 performers who played masked or helmeted characters in the original trilogy, including Darth Vader and Boba Fett themselves, David Prowse and Jeremy Bulloch, to examine how Star Wars changed their lives forever. While perhaps not the most sexy or exciting content for a Star Wars fan, there is value in examining less well-trod territory like this. After all, this is the franchise that famously manufactures an action figure for even the most minor and forgettable of characters. You get an action figure, and you get an action figure. The subjects come to the doc with enough good humor to make Elree 1976 an illuminating sit, showing the impact the series has had even on those who made ultimately tiny contributions to the overall tapestry. Number 8, The Prequel Strike Back, A Fan's Journey. In recent years, there's been something of a re-evaluation of the Star Wars prequels by some fans, who have attempted to reclaim the trilogy by arguing that they were unfairly maligned. Now, in fairness, The Prequel Strike Back, A Fan's Journey is incredibly unlikely to change the minds of anyone who has firmly set hatred for the prequels, but it does nevertheless make an argument for reconsidering their merits now, years removed from their emotionally fraught original release. The discourse surrounding the prequels has historically been so toxic that it's been tough for both sides of the argument to have worthwhile, good-faith dialogue. And Bradley Weatherholt's film is nothing if not a plea to change that. It's about time, folks. There's little in the way of sermonizing here, but rather a curiosity to reframe the prequel's perception and invite Star Wars fans to embrace them less for their failures than their achievements. Whether you're ultimately persuaded or not, it provides compelling food for thought. Never hurts to look on the bright side either. Number 7, The Skywalker Legacy. It's not merely a flippant, snide remark to say that 2020's The Skywalker Legacy, a behind-the-curtain look at the rise of Skywalker's production, is a good sight more entertaining than the movie itself. I still have nightmares. Even if, like many and myself, you were left crestfallen by the film's creative missteps, The Skywalker Legacy is a worthy testament to the fact that J.J. Abrams and his indefatigable cast and crew gave everything they had to try and give the sequel trilogy a meaningful conclusion, while lacking the blunt honesty of The Last Jedi's companion doc we'll be getting to momentarily. This is a thoroughly entertaining reminder that blockbuster movies are basically impossible miracles, even when they don't turn out that great. The sheer number of moving parts and human bodies involved with even the simplest of shots is easy to take for granted, but The Skywalker Legacy gladly puts it front and center. Number 6, The Making of Star Wars. The original Star Wars making-of documentary may lack the substance of its successors on this list, but given that it's hosted by C-3PO and R2-D2, the novelty factor is undeniable. Who wouldn't want to chill with these droid legends whenever they get the chance? Across a tight 50 minutes, the making of Star Wars offers up a whistle-stop tour through A New Hope's production, narrated by the dulcet tones of veteran actor William Conrad. The behind-the-scenes footage of Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher, and Harrison Ford rehearsing on set is enough alone to make it worth watching, and though hardly a deep dive into the film's creation, it does speedily touch broadly on many key areas. Watched today, this thoroughly of-its-time doc can't help but seem quaint, yet there's also an overpowering charm to it. A dusty, scratchy relic produced just before Star Wars became the all-encompassing pop culture phenom that it is today. Content-wise, it's fairly average by contemporary standards, but the quirky presentation elevates it considerably. Cheers for checking out this Star Wars video today, my friend. Now tap that subscribe button down below for more of this What Culture Star Wars stuff in your day. Number 5. The Director and the Jedi. Without question, the single best documentary produced about the Star Wars sequels, The Director and the Jedi isn't merely a frothy puff-piece collection of behind-the-scenes footage. It's an at times disarmingly frank look at the challenges Rian Johnson and producer Ram Bergman faced while making The Last Jedi. This doc provides staggering insight into the sheer daunting task of directing a modern Star Wars movie. And no matter your own feelings on the divisive sequel itself, you'll likely come away from it having greater respect for Johnson as a filmmaker. The easy highlight is seeing Johnson and Mark Hamill disagree over the film's creative direction for Luke Skywalker, and how that was reconciled throughout production. Elsewhere, it's a fast-paced yet in-depth look at the nuts and bolts that hold a contemporary blockbuster film together, offering the sort of intimate perspective rarely seen in behind-the-scenes docs these days. Number 4. Within a Minute, the making of Episode 3. Within a Minute runs down the production of Revenge of the Sith, with a specific focus on the climactic, minute-long lightsaber duel between Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi. Maybe the best lightsaber fight of all time outside of Duel of the Fates? I think it is. More than anything else, this doc exhaustively details the mind-boggling amount of people and man-hours required to produce even a mere 60 seconds of blockbuster film, covering everything from the most mundane logistical minutiae of feeding the cast and crew to the top-level creative decisions made by George Lucas himself. And despite dedicating almost 80 minutes to a single short sequence from the film, Within a Minute's revelations hold true for the movie as a whole, if not most of the prequel trilogy also. For anyone interested in the guts of filmmaking and how almost unfathomably huge movies are produced, this is an excellent starting point given how concisely it examines the process from the ground up. Number 3. The People vs. George Lucas. The People vs. George Lucas is perhaps the single most fascinating examination of pop culture fandom ever created. Alexandra O. Philippe's stupendously entertaining film chronicles the phenomenal success of the IP, before leaping off to document the vitriolic fan reaction to the prequels. With wit, humor, and clear-eyed perspective, Philippe forensically breaks down why the prequels were received with such vocal disdain, while asking the audience to consider who Star Wars really belongs to, George Lucas or the fans. But Philippe's film isn't merely another excuse to rake Lucas across the coals and whine about how disappointing the prequels were. The doc's viewpoint is balanced enough to accept that a decent swath of the loudest complainers are nitpickers who were never going to be pleased with the end result. Though it crucially, if totally unsurprisingly, lacks an interview with Lucas himself, the evocative archive footage and fan interviews serve as a stunning time capsule of the single most contentious period in the series' history. And you thought the sequel trilogy's reception was bad? Think again. Number 2. The Beginning, making Star Wars Episode 1 The Phantom Menace. Whether you love, hate, or fall somewhere in the middle on The Phantom Menace, The Beginning is an utterly transfixing look at the hugely anticipated sequel's creation. Even with the enormous secrecy surrounding production, this doc follows George Lucas and the closest members of his inner circle through basically every aspect of development with an astonishing degree of freedom. The doc benefits immensely from the fact that The Phantom Menace marks such a groundbreaking inflection point for Hollywood blockbusters as a whole, with Lucas returning to to Helmer films straddled firmly between practical artistry and cutting-edge digital filmmaking. Despite being included as a special feature on The Phantom Menace's DVD release, the beginning impressively refuses to shy away from the frustrations felt by not only Lucas, but those working with him during the pressure cooker environment of arguably the single most anticipated film of all time. People were hyped, and watching editor Ben Burt grit his teeth as he discusses Lucas's desire to digitally fuse different takes together is a perfect summation of the double-edged sword that is modern digital film production. And number 1, Empire of Dreams, the story of the Star Wars trilogy. Number 1 could only ever be this, right? A mammoth 150-minute doc released in 2004 as part of a new Star Wars trilogy DVD box set. Despite covering the original 3 films, Empire of Dreams crams an almost exhausting amount of detail and insight into its runtime, serving as basically the definitive behind-the-scenes account of the movies. More than anything else, it confirms the sheer miraculous nature of not only A New Hope, but its 2 direct sequels. The sheer back-breaking amount of work that went into shooting and hammering them into shape. For anyone who dares to diminish George Lucas's role in making Star Wars what it is, Empire of Dreams is the perfect counterargument, even while avoiding feeling like a fawning hagiography. As close to authoritative as Star Wars docs get, Empire of Dreams conveys the uncommon passion which drove the franchise to such stratospheric success, and the galaxy was never the same again.